I think what constitutes as a tale of our time is a story or a multimedia product that's a whole generation of people think back and they can remember it very well.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well. This is not a spoiler-free show, so bear that in mind as you continue to listen. We tackle books, movies, podcasts, and more. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read. Or, in today's case, to watch, read. Today's story really is kind of covered by a variety of mediums. So you wherever you get it, you can find that. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, and joining me today is our guest and recent, though no longer new, I think, RTI host, Joey Chou.
Hello, good to be here.
So some of you have probably heard Joey. He's got his own programs, Beyond the Reefs, and what's the Asia's Top 40?
Asia Pop 40, like
Asia
pop music 40. Yeah.
Yeah. He's been here for a little while, and I finally managed to convince him to come on my show to talk about one of his favorite stories.
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
Because apparently this is also your favorite.
Well, this is like my favorite kind of genre of story, right? Although I still haven't seen this movie yet, though.
Oh, no! Prepare to get into this.
I do not think I will be spoiled on anything that happens. But anyway, Joey, is there anything you'd like to say to introduce yourself?
I was born and raised in Taiwan, went to study in Vancouver, Canada, came back 15 years ago, and now here I am.
So to get into it a little bit, the story that we're talking about today is the 2004 film Troy,
right?
Directed by Wolfgang Petersen. Now this is why. So if you were wondering why I was whiling out at the beginning, there, it's because if you probably have heard at least a little bit of Troy, right? There's so much mythology around this like really famous story. I know it from the Iliad. So I'm really curious to see if this movie ends in the same place, and maybe we can talk about that like towards the end, because I know that side history
or quote unquote history.
Side history.
Yeah, because apparently on Wikipedia page it says Troy is an epic historical war film, but it's not, is it?
Historical.
Not only did this movie take a lot of creative freedom with the stories told in Iliad and the Odyssey.
It has to.
But also it's Greek mythology. I mean, there are a lot of people who don't even really know where Troy, the city, might actually be in the world that we live.
I mean, so far as I understand, Troy is purportedly somewhere around Turkey or Persia in the Persian Empire, which does kind of make sense. Like Greece and Persia were always kind of at each other, back and forth, right? And as for mythology, I feel like the Odyssey and the Iliad are to Greek mythology as Hans Christian Andersen is to fairy tales.
Yes.
Where like fairy tales don't necessarily have an author, right? They just exist as stories that have been told multiple times.
Right.
In the same way, like mythology doesn't have one person that made up the story, but the Odyssey and the Iliad questionably do. We also don't know if Homer was a real person.
Exactly.
But regardless, they're epics, not just cool epic. So for anyone out there, an epic is actually a type of story. It's a very long saga that usually involves heroes and wars and gods and something like this. So there's also like, for example, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is from that same area, but there are epics from many different places. So,
and there's also certain styles to recount the stories, as in, sonically and musically. You're supposed to tell them in a certain way because the bards would sing it. Yes,
it refers as well to like a way that the story was originally written.
Right.
But anyway, hold on. That's not what we're doing today, though. Today we're talking about 2004.
The
Wolfgang
movie.
Petersen, Troy. A very fun, epic romp.
Yeah.
With the
That's
story.
exactly what it is.
Not trying to break any barriers here, just trying to have a good time.
Right.
And all the kind of like messy drama and gore and everything else that gets in
All
that. So, Joey.
Yeah.
Would you please give us a summary of what happens in the 2004 Troy?
Okay. So starts with King Agamemnon, who reunited the Greek kingdoms, mostly with the help of a fierce warrior. His name is Achilles, the human anatomy called the Achilles tendon. That's supposedly his weakness. Anyhow, so he is a heroic warrior. He fights for King Agamemnon, but he's displeased with his tyrannical rule, right?
There's just people who can't be in the same room.
And there's also things that he did that he just didn't like. But there's also, from the very first scene of this movie, you see that Agamemnon is going into battle, and there are two armies facing each other, and they say, how about let's not have any more bloodsheds? Let's have one or two men.
Like a champion battle.
Yeah. And then on the Agamemnon side, he said, how about I have Achilles? And then you have crickets, because apparently he didn't join the march. And so he sends a messenger back to the camp to call for Achilles, who is like a schoolboy late for his exam. King Agamemnon is trying to give him a talking to, and he's like, why are you even late to a battle?
This is literally a war. You can't just show up whenever you want.
So Achilles kind of just scoffs at him and says, imagine a king who fights his own battles.
Yikes.
And then he goes up, slays this person, and then everybody cheers. And by the way, Achilles is played by Brad Pitt.
Yeah, which is good. Imagine Brad Pitt.
Imagine Brad Pitt in all of his glory.
Yeah,
if anyone is going to portray a demigod, you would think it's him. So he did that, and then they won. They united the Greek kingdom by that one last battle. At night, there is a huge banquet where Agamemnon's younger brother, who is the king of Sparta, they're all there.
Menelaus.
Menelaus.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Go on.
They're all there to celebrate. And so are Troy's Prince Hector, his younger brother Paris, but they're there to strike a peace deal with Menelaus. And this is where Paris
absconds with, in one way or another,
with the wife of Menelaus, Helen of Troy. She was later called. By the way, I should add a side note that this version of the story, this movie, really removes all the divine intervention.
That's fun.
Because if you were to put them all in, then you would have, all the gods were there, right? This is the most significant
just about
story.
Everybody picked sides.
Exactly. Okay, so next day, Hector and Paris are on their ship back to Troy, and then Hector found out from his younger brother on the ship that Helen is there, and he's like, how could you do this? We just struck a peace deal.
Hector's like, dude, what the heck? You've ruined us. But they just have to go. They've already done it, so they might as well get there.
Sense.
We might as well go to Troy. We have a wall that cannot be breached. We're going to stay there.
Yeah.
And then in Greece, everyone's waking up and freaking out as they just realize, no.
There's one snippet of information where Hector sort of scoffs at his younger brother and says, basically suggesting that, fine, I will defend you because you're my younger brother. So honor
Hector's the best character.
and loyalty, is what Hector represents. On the Greek side, Agamemnon and his younger brother woke up, and they have different agendas. Menelaus just wants to get his wife back, of course, enraged. Agamemnon just wants to take his chance to take over Troy. So he sends words out to Odysseus, and he's played by Sean Bean. And so he persuaded Achilles to join them. Initially reluctant, he seeks out his mother, who tells him that if you go to Troy, you will have glory, but you might not return. If you don't go to Troy, you will be forgotten.
And this is Achilles' mom.
Achilles' mom.
Yeah, she's a nymph.
Yeah, right. The same lady who dangled him by his ankle to dip into river Styx.
Giving him almost invulnerability.
Almost.
Yeah.
Except for his heels.
Key.
Okay, so they all sail off. And first battle, as they land, take the beach. Achilles has a very significant role in that. But then, of course, later on, he just wants to stay in his camp. Also, on this first day battle, they sacked an Apollo temple. And then he took captive one of the priestess, played by the beautiful Rose Byrne. I had a huge crush on her when I was little. So he took her hostage.
Everyone in this movie is really hot.
Very good looking.
It's look up the cast, and then you'll know why we keep mentioning good casting.
So prior, at the top of our talk about this story, we said that Achilles and Agamemnon butt heads.
For many reasons.
Yeah.
Is this the other breaking point?
And here's the second breaking point, which is Agamemnon, just to make sure that he shows Achilles who's the boss, he takes Brius for his own. And Achilles was about to slay him right then and there, but Odysseus says, you got to think about the bigger picture here, man. So the next day, the Greeks, they go out and fight without Achilles. Don't do very well. And this is where Hector really shined, because Hector from Troy, he's
also
dominating
a hero.
The battle.
He's great at what he does.
Yes.
And to be fair, Hector, I'm such a Hector stan, not even for this movie. Hector's just doing this to protect his home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
and his family,
Yeah.
right? He's not doing it
he
for
has a
any
young
other
child.
reasons.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know this movie.
He's the man with the least ego, which is very refreshing in the whole entire
Mm-hmm.
Greek mythology saga.
Everybody loves Hector.
Yeah.
Even a lot of the Greeks, like when they talk about it, they're like, oh, man, he does suck because he's on the other side, but he's so honorable.
He is. So he drives the Greek army all the way back to the beach, ending the first day of the battle before Achilles is still sour about Agamemnon. I can't pronounce that name.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
We can call him the High King.
Okay. The next day, Achilles brought Patroclus, who in the movie it says Patroclus is his cousin, but for those of us who read at least Plato's interpretation of Greek mythologies, we know that they're actually lovers. So
Questionably, but
questionably,
probably,
most
probably.
possibly. So the next day, Patroclus, with Achilles' encouragement, dons Achilles' armor and goes out to fight. And he is a great fighter, although it's not really reflected in the movie. So it actually just says that Patroclus, the very next day, took Achilles' armor without his consent. So this is a departure from the actual story, and then got killed, was slain by Hector. And now, as you can imagine, this gives Achilles a reason to want to join the battle, and he did. So the next day, he rides alone in the movie, he rides alone to the wall of Troy and yells out Hector's name. Hector, being the honorable Hector, is not going to stay behind his walls, so he says goodbye to his family.
Because you got to know what's coming. Achilles is literally invulnerable. So far as these guys know, they don't know about his heel. So he's literally invulnerable.
Yeah. So he says goodbye to his son, to his wife, to his father, who is the king of Troy, is his younger brother, Paris.
Stupid Paris.
Yeah. And then he goes out to battle. And I would say this is the highlight of the film.
Yeah.
Where Hector, who is played by Eric Bana, they have a huge one-on-one fight scene.
Knockdown, drag out.
Hector was doing well at first, and then he stumbles on a rock, apparently. I don't know if this was in the original story.
I don't remember what.
And then Achilles has the upper hand, kills him, takes his body back to the camp, but he did say that I will make sure that I take out your eyes, take out your ears. So that's
so he warned them.
Yeah, he warned them.
I guess he warned them that he was going to be unhinged.
So that in the afterlife, people will look at this person and say, this is Hector, the fool. And the king of Troy is absolutely heartbroken,
destroyed,
knowing what Achilles is going to do to the body of his son. He slips into the Greek camp, and begs Achilles to give him his son back. Achilles does, and says there will be days of peace. However, this is when Sean Bean, who plays Odysseus, came up with a great idea. And for those of you who know how the story of Troy ends, they built this huge horse and then leaves it on the beach, but inside it had Greek soldiers hiding in it. So the Trojan soldiers came out, saw this huge horse, thought the Greeks have retreated.
Is this what happens in the movie?
In the movie, yeah.
Oh, it goes all the way through. Okay.
Yeah, took the horse all the way back to the city. There's a huge celebration, and night is...
Yeah, they take the city of Troy. Odysseus and fam pop out, open the gates, and they destroy the city.
So, and then it goes all the way to the end of the movie. I don't think there's much needed to be mentioned here. Everything's on fire. Everyone is fighting. And then Paris, maybe accidentally, shot an arrow at Achilles' heel.
That's interesting, because if the gods are removed, then it's like pure luck.
Yeah.
In the stories with the gods, it's usually like Paris shoots an arrow, and with divine intervention, it perfectly goes into the heel of Achilles.
Thereby.
And Achilles dies, and everyone's like, oh my God, Paris, we didn't know you actually could kill anyone.
Yeah. And then that's the end of the story.
And so then in the movie, Achilles dies in the siege of Troy.
He does, yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. And I think there's a little bit of a narrator at the end who talks about the ego or the honor of man. And, you know,
there's a lot to get into.
Some people go there for family. Some people go there for glory, that kind of thing.
Yeah. There's a lot to get into about the ego of man. Okay. That's fun. That's interesting. Yeah. So yeah, you can see where the departures are. Not so bad though. I think it was a good choice to remove the gods. And then it's a double mess.
So
it
I
sounds
love
like
it.
an all-star thing.
I remember having a DVD and watched it over and over again.
Yeah.
And every time I wish Achilles didn't die.
Really?
And he
I
always
gotta
does.
be honest. I don't really like Achilles as a character.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he didn't like necessarily do good, but I don't want to say I've never seen him as a hero, but to me, Achilles' like ego throughout the entire Trojan War, which I will also point out is earned. It like he's so focused on like pursuing ego that like the Patroclus thing happens because Patroclus was trying to encourage him He's like, it doesn't matter if you're for Agamemnon, you are for all the other people that are here, and you're for, like, we want to go home, right?
Yeah.
And Achilles is kind of like sulking because he wants his treasures.
Yeah.
And so Patroclus goes out to try and inspire him. And then only when it's too late is Achilles like, oh no, my actions could have prevented this, but my ego got in the way. And then also because he kills Hector, and that makes me really sad.
Yeah, so the Greek tragedy, usually you have one or two tragedies, but in this one story, in this one like 4-day battle, you have multiple folds of tragedies happening on both sides.
Totally missed that. This happens over just a period of several days.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's at the end of a 10-year war, or near the end of a 10-year war.
It skips to it.
Right.
Okay. So it is implied that they've been doing this for a long time.
They've been
in
the movie. It doesn't suggest that much. Yeah.
So in the movie, it could just be
like a one-off.
Unfortunately, we got to get a move on. So let me ask you this one then. What makes this story so meaningful to you?
I think the same way that you mentioned many times, that Hector is someone who represents honor, and he protects his family, and he does everything for his family. And I really looked up to his character. And it showed me the first sign of what a Greek tragedy, like, because sometimes you read the stories in the books, but you don't really feel it. However, if you watch the movie, you really feel the poignant side, and then you know that, like, every time you rewatch the movie, so many turns of events, it could have been prevented, but it happened because of, the foolishness of men, the ego of men, and
everything else. You know what? But I think that's a really good point too, is I think a lot of these stories, kind of like Shakespeare's plays in that way, they were meant to be told in person or to be like witnessed or acted out.
Yeah.
And so a lot of like the decisions that people make, like when you look at it on paper, you're like, well, why would you do something so stupid? Like, you can kind of like project yourself in there. You can project reason and logic. So then when you get to see them acted out by somebody who's really trying to put themselves in the place of that person, you can empathize better with the cruel tragedy or irony of the thing happening. So I think having it in like an epic movie is a good way to both like diffuse the innate tragedy of a lot of the events that happen and also bring it to an audience that would like maybe not normally see it.
Yeah, like Achilles, he's kind of a brat, but you get the reason why he then finally decided to kill Hector, and he was saddened by the fact that Patroclus died because of him, really.
Well, and then honestly, there's so much here that we could get into as well. Like not even accounting for like Greek fate, which is I did an episode about this, so you guys could listen to it in the back. But like in Greek mythology, fate is unavoidable and unturnable. Right. There is literally nothing you can do to change it. It's not like this modern idea we have with like, if you could change your fate, you can't.
Yeah.
And also that technically this is the honorable thing, blah, blah, there's a lot of stuff, but there's other podcasts for that. So instead, Joey, what meaning do you think other people could find in this? Or is it something similar to what you just said?
I think so. I think even now in 2024, I think this is still a great story retold. The fact that they took a lot of creative freedom with this one and departure from the original text made it more like fleshed out and human. Go check it out. Yeah.
So look at it as a more human story.
It's a human story.
Yeah.
Though I still argue Brad Pitt was still a god back then. I think it was after his marriage with Angelina Jolie that we start to see his human side. Like, he can make mistakes.
Oh, sick burn. But yeah, I mean, like I said briefly, it is good. Removing the gods from it, kind of like humanizing this story, is another way to like make it more approachable, like something that you can empathize with. But we're almost out of time. So to close up, I'd like to ask you if you could give 2024, because this is 2024. If you could give 2004's Troy a one-phrase subtitle of your very own, what would that be?
Subtitle?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
like
wow.
You make up the subtitle for the movie.
Troy, Greek gods made human? Or really, if my caption were to go on the movie poster, it's just Troy, how great does Brad Pitt look?
Let's put that as the subtitle. And then Greek gods made human. Yeah. Greek gods made human. Subtitle. How great does Brad Pitt look? Question mark.
There you go.
And then a rating box at the bottom. So rate from 10 to 10.
Yeah.
That's actually all that you can put in, but you're going to want to put it 10. So, well, Joey, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. This was fun. Yeah. There's so much that I could say about it, but unfortunately, we are all out of time. So thank you, Joey, for coming on the show. And thank you to everybody out there for listening. This has been Tales of Our Time on Radio Taiwan International. I was your host, Amanda Stevens, with my guest, Joey. And I hope you enjoyed learning more about 2004's Troy, Greek Gods Made Human, a tale of our time. We'll see you next time.